Good morning, happy race day. It's Andrew here with Fast Cars, Fast Money, and we're talking about Pocono today. So if you're new here, how can you help us out? You can like, comment, share, retweet our content. It allows us to get to more people. If you haven't already, subscribing to this YouTube channel is greatly appreciated. We're only 23 subscribers away from 1,000, which is our goal. So we are so close. If you want access to the spreadsheet or just to ask us questions or get access to maybe the Xfinity series or the Truck Series spreadsheets that we put out, go over on X. It's at Fast Cars FM. Then hey, if you had a good weekend, you just want to say thanks, so show your support, fund my race tickets to be able to go to more races. There's a couple of links there for tips and PayPal and Venmo there in the support tab. So when we talk about Pocono, it is a unique track. First and foremost, it's a big track. It's 2.5 miles long. It's kind of known as the tricky triangle because there's three turns at this track, and all three turns are different. But since it's such a large track, there's only 160 laps today. So, you know, I would say place differential and finishing potential are, maybe slightly bumped up than dominator points. Lap leaders, fast lap getters, dominator points are still important. Definitely more so here than at Mexico or like a different road course or anything. But it's not like we have 250, 260, 300 laps today. So, that kind of limits how much points there are in terms of dominator upside. So really, it's just coming down to the right combination of, what lap leaders do you want to play, what finishing potential, drivers do you want to play, and what drivers, do you think offer good place differential upside. And ideally, if we can find some like hybrid combinations that drivers that maybe offer us two or even three of these buckets altogether, those are really the plays I think you want to focus on today. So when we look at qualifying was pretty interesting. There was a lot of drivers who weren't able to take a qualifying time. So because of that, we have a lot of place differential plays in the field today. But when we look at the expensive range, you got Hamlin, Blaney, Larson, Byron, and Bell. Now, Hamlin and Bell are the non-PD plays. And if I had to prioritize one of them, I'm going to prioritize Hamlin. Hamlin has just been so good at Pocono. He's really good here, and it's evident with where he qualified. He starts on the pole. He has clean air. He's the favorite to win today. In the three next gen races at Pocono, he has two wins here and an average finish of 1.3. I mean, that's crazy. He's the most laps led, the most fast laps, starts out front. There's a very good scenario in lineup build today where you just build around Hamlin and stack him with place differential, upside plays. Well, who are some other guys that might project well? I think Blaney and Larson are, maybe in the same boat where they're kind of these hybrid, place differential, upside, types of plays. But we can easily see them, contending for the win, contending for top five, top 10. Um, they're expensive, so depending on how top heavy you get here, it might limit your build for the rest of the your construction. But really like Blaney and Larson a lot. But if I had to pick one, guy to pair Hamlin with, and you could easily just fade Hamlin as well and just play Blaney, Larson, and Byron or some combination of these guys, just going an all place differential type of build, assuming that, maybe Blaney, Larson, or Byron will get out front and lead you some laps today as well. But Byron had the car to beat. He's been arguably the best car all season long. He's not getting the results, but you don't always necessarily need the results for DFS. Um, he's been a lap leader, fast lap getter, contending for the wins. Looks like he has the car to beat almost every week. And that was evident again this weekend. The issue is he wrecked his car during his qualifying lap. Arguably, we probably would have seen him up front, next to Hamlin. But because of that, he goes to a backup car and he starts 31st. So will he have the same speed? We'll see. But regardless, I still suspect him to move forward and contend for a top 10 today. And if he does that, he's going to be a good play. So with me so high on Hamlin, Blaney, Larson, and Byron, I think you just kind of mix and match these drivers together. Christopher Bell just kind of gets left out for me. He starts ninth, doesn't give you nearly the place differential upside that these other guys do that we just talked about. And with starting ninth, he doesn't give us the same upside in terms of lap leading potential that Denny Hamlin does. So I'm just really not getting to Bell today. Reddick, maybe you could make an argument for him. He's been pretty good at Pocono, average finish here of fourth, but he's still a little bit more of a tournament play to get different. Everyone's going to be playing Hamlin, Blaney, Larson, and Byron. So maybe Reddick's ownership's a little bit lower today than it should be, making him an interesting tournament play. Um, Really like Chase Elliott. If you can't afford Blaney, Larson, or Byron, or maybe you're just trying to find, a way to get different with still some good place differential upside, I really like Elliott today. Doesn't give you as much place differential, but he's been pretty good at Pocono. He's cheaper, average finish here of 7.3. He's been a top 10 machine all season long, which is evident with where he sits in the point standings. So I really like Elliott today. I'm going to probably be over the field on Chase Elliott. Not really getting to Logano. Kind of starts around where I think he's going to finish. And even yesterday in the Xfinity Series broadcast, he's like, yeah, our car's okay. Maybe it's one or two adjustments away, but I'm not really too interested there. I'd much rather go down and play Ross Chastain. He's run pretty well at Pocono despite really not having the results, for one reason or another. It's also cheaper than the 10K, place differential plays. So maybe play Hamlin and go down the Ross, and maybe that opens up some salary to get a little bit different, in your builds today. Now, Chris Buescher is interesting, kind of the same argument that if you saw our Xfinity Series sheet on X yesterday, kind of the same argument that we made for Brandon Jones, where he started right next to Chase Elliott, where it's like, yeah, everyone's assuming that Denny Hamlin's going to go out there and lead laps, and he most likely will. But Chris Buescher's right there, and it's not like his car is slow by any means. So, maybe a tournament play, you fade Hamlin, you play Buescher, and you pair him with the place differential plays. Maybe that's a path to a takedown, but it's extremely risky. If Buescher does not lead laps or falls back, he's really going to tank your line. So he's a very, very risky play. Keselowski's kind of in the same boat as Logano for me, just starts around where I think he's going to finish. Ty Gibbs, yes, he's been running better as of late, but starting seventh for DFS purposes, that's just a tough range to get to. Limited place differential upside, if any, and not really projecting him to get too many fast laps or even lead that many laps today. I do like Kyle Busch though. He starts 26. It's been tough to trust as well. It just seems like the last couple of years is just not himself. It's evident with his pricing continuing to go lower and lower, but he starts 26th. He starts in the second half of the field, pretty affordable. I don't mind him today. Not really getting the Briscoe. Same thing with Ty Gibbs, just tough starting spot. The Carson Hocevar, maybe you can throw him in the same category as Chris Buescher of like, he has the speed. His first win's probably right around the corner. He ran really well at Michigan, which is another high speed, large track. But again, he starts third. So if he doesn't get a good finish or if he wrecks out or has some type of issue, your lineup is just killed. But you could make the same argument, for Hamlin too. Like if Hamlin goes out and wrecks or, has a tire go down or, whatever it is and finishes, 18th, 19th and doesn't really lead that many laps, that's going to kill all those lineups too. So, it is NASCAR DFS. Nothing is guaranteed. But when we get down to the 7K range, I really do like Bubba Wallace and Alex Bowman. So Bubba was another driver who was not able to take a qualifying time. His numbers at Pocono are very strong. He was really good in practice as well. He's pretty affordable, starts deep. Makes a lot of sense today, as you need to find some cheaper plays on the slate. I like Bowman too. Bowman's been really hard to play as of late, especially the last couple of months. The results have just not been there. His standings in the points continue to plummet, but he's still a 100 motorsports car. He still starts 25th. He has good speed, some good place differential upside. Eventually he will get a good finish. I like Austin Cindric too. I think everyone's going to play Bubba and Alex Bowman, so maybe Cindric's ownership is a little bit lower than it should be. But his numbers on the intermediate tracks this year are actually pretty good, and I really like him as a nice pivot play today. Ryan Preece starts 13th, having a great year. The problem is for DFS, he starts right around where I think he's going to run and where he's going to finish, so that kind of limits his upside. I'd much rather just pay down for Josh Berry. Another driver, so many drivers today, or yesterday, I should say, didn't make qualifying efforts. Basically starts at DFL, very affordable, should move forward and gain you spots. Suarez starts 10th, a little bit too far forward for me. Stenhouse, McDowell, and Allmendinger, these guys are all similar to me. If you can't pay for the Wallaces, the Bowmans, the Berries, or maybe if you are playing with some of those drivers and you still need a cheaper guy, I think going to one of these drivers makes sense. All of them offer top 20 upside. All of them start pretty deep in the field. They're relatively safe options. Eric Jones starts 11th, been running really well. Pocono is a good track for him. Again, the problem is he starts 11th, so it kind of limits his upside. Really cool to see SVG get a win. He's locked into the playoffs now. But now that we're back on a quote unquote intermediate, oval, excuse me, style track, um, he's been running better on these types of tracks, but still, it doesn't make sense to play SVG in my mind. I'd rather just play Stenhouse, McDowell, or Allmendinger. Zane Smith and Noah Gregson, both of them start a little bit too far forward for me. I think they'll both finish around this range, or Gregson will likely fall back. Todd Gillen doesn't really have the same upside, in my opinion, as Stenhouse, McDowell, or Allmendinger, but he's also cheaper. So if you can't get to those guys and you need another guy on the slate, I think Todd would be where I would go. And then really Todd's probably the last guy I'm clicking on. I don't really want to get below him. Haley starts a little bit too far forward. He hasn't been running well. Austin Dillon, it's kind of the same thing, starts too far forward. John Hunter Nemechek, Cole Custer, both of them start way too far forward for me to trust. Ty Dillon, maybe, he's been so hit or miss. He starts in the 20s, like he likely finishes in the 20s. Same with Riley Herbst. Cody Ware is probably one of the slowest cars on the track. And then Brendan Poole, good chance this car has a mechanical issue, or if it doesn't, is projected to finish last. So I haven't built any lineups today, but I think there's a couple different ways you can go, right? I think you can play, a primary lap leader, whether that's Hamlin, Busher, Hocevar, maybe not so much Busher and Hocevar, maybe, but, Hamlin's going to be the main primary lap leader, projected primary lap leader, pairing him with some place differential plays, or, maybe you just attack these place differential plays altogether. You fade Hamlin, you hope he has an issue or doesn't run well, or you just think with, limited amount of laps that the Blaneys, the Larsons, the Byrons, the Chastains, the Wallaces, the Bowmans, all these guys are going to come forward and score good points today. So that's going to do it for the Pocono breakdown. Hopefully this has been helpful. If it has, again, hitting that subscribe button is greatly appreciated. We're only 23 away from 1,000. That was my goal when we first started this channel back in like 2021 or something when COVID was going on. At least I think that's when it started. But anyways, if you're going to the track, good luck, stay cool. It looks like it's going to be a hot one, and I'll catch you guys next week.